that, I would like to, I think that there were at least 12 participants on the call today. And I was just wondering if it would be possible if everyone could briefly introduce themselves, maybe in a minute to 2 minutes, and say your name, a little bit about yourself, where you live within our ANC, and if you're representing yourself as an individual or group, and what you hope to achieve as a participant in this task force. And then once we go through those introductions, we'll have hopefully a good discussion of identifying issues and then perhaps narrowing, if we have time, the issues, and then deciding how we proceed. So with that, Jerry, you want
Sandra,
to take?
I'll just unmute one person at a time and I'll say who it is. And I'm just going down the list as it appears to me.
Okay.
Lisa Oakley.
Oops. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. Thanks, Lisa.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, thank you so much for hosting this, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do it. And I'll just try to be brief. So I'm working with a group of people. We started Chevy Chase for Racial Progress, and it's a group of a lot of enthusiastic and very active young people in our neighborhood. And we have a whole wide range of issues, I think, that we'd like to see addressed. And some of the people who may speak more about that, everything from getting police officers out of the schools, and our top priority, actually, the most immediate thing is we're trying to have work on the fountain and the memorial at the fountain, and getting that removed as soon as possible as well. So that's just one thing, but there's lots of broader issues that our group wants to see done in terms of housing, from housing to healthcare, and lots of different things. So we're really excited that the ANC is taking on some of these topics as well. So that's it.
Thank you.
Aaron.
Hi, I'm Aaron Gorman. I'm also working with Chevy Chase for Racial Progress. And I decided that I made the petition regarding the fountain, and then I kind of decided that there was a lot more, or me and a group of people, I should say, decided that there was a lot more issues that we as a community needed to address, both in terms of our local area, but also in terms of DC as a whole. And we decided that we wanted to make local change through community organizing. So that is why I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Carl?
Hi, everyone. I'm Carl Lankowski. I'm currently the president of Historic Chevy Chase DC. I'm not representing Historic Chevy Chase DC. I'm here in my personal capacity. But as a member of Historic Chevy Chase DC, we're very interested, of course, in what's happening in the neighborhood, and we've been engaged in the whole issue of demographics of the neighborhood, how it's changed, how it was created as a white enclave, what's changed since then. And just as a citizen, I'm interested in the topic and will contribute what I can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cal?
Hi, I'm Cal Simone. I live on Nevada, about halfway between McKinley and Patterson. My parents moved to this house when I was 10, and I'm back here sheltered in place with them. They're now 89 and 94. I myself have been involved with racism. I was in a community where I was the only white straight male about 15 years ago. So I've been 15, 16 years. I'm a Jungian, so I'm not much of an activist. So I'm working with a group of men, 2 black, 2 white, who are developing a body of work to help folks look at their racialized identities and their orientation towards society and racism and whatnot, their worldview, and mostly for white folks. I'm not sure how much that applies in this neighborhood because we seem to be pretty awake in this neighborhood, relatively speaking. And there was something else I wanted to say. Yeah, I was on a task force in the city of San Francisco for something else for about 12 years ago.
Okay, thanks. Kate,
Oh,
you're
got
up.
it. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Hi. Sorry, let me turn on my video. I got on a little bit late, so I didn't have a question, but it sounds like you're just introducing yourselves.
Yes.
Is that it? I'm Kate Atkinson. I live on Chevy Chase Parkway. I'm on the board of Historic Chevy Chase along with Carl, and I'm just listening in as an interested citizen and community advocate for all good things. So that's me.
Thank you.
Okay. Robin,
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, how are you? I'm really not in your ANC. I'm really in 3F, but I am very close to the circle. I pass through the circle almost on a daily basis, and I'm very interested in what you're trying to do. And my employer has given us a certain number of hours to do some advocacy. And I want to do something within my community as it deals with racism. So I'm here to listen in. I'm here to contribute wherever I can. And thank you for having it.
And Robin, what's your last name?
Robbins, Robbins.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Whitney,
Hi, how are you? My name is Whitney. I'm here in my personal capacity. I'm on Morrison. I've lived in the neighborhood about 2 years, and I've been in DC for 10. This is my first ANC meeting. I'm just here to better understand what's going on in our neighborhood and be of help however I can. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Ron,
Whoop, hold on a minute. I lost y'all.
you're there.
Yeah, well, sort of. Hold on just a second. Okay, sorry about that. I'm Ron Eichner, and I've lived 2 blocks west of Connecticut Avenue for about 45 years. And I'm here as an individual, and I'm a native Washingtonian, and these issues are very dear to my heart. I'm particularly interested in the intersection of urban planning and issues of race, which I believe are generally underappreciated out there. At a very personal level, I'm also interested in getting some insight into my own behavior, since I am a real estate developer, and I'm probably, there are people who would call me a gentrifier, given where my projects are and who shops and lives in them. I've never displaced anybody, but trying to come to grips with how to resolve what I do and what I think is good and important with its impacts is something I've been struggling with, and looking to get some insight into that.
Great, thank you. Thelma? You're muted, Thelma. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay, is that?
Yep.
Me now. Okay. I'm chairman of the External Affairs Committee of the Knollwood Residents Association, the retired military and officers, and we are just care about the community and want to see if there's anything we can do that would help to improve the situation in the area. So I'm here really just to listen in and see what's going on and if there's anything we can do. Thanks.
Okay, great. Okay. Linda?
I'm supposed to, am I supposed to unmute myself?
You're unmuted.
Just introduce, you're good. Just start talking.
Not usually. Hi, I live in the neighborhood up 30th Street near McKinley. And I'm here, I actually have a meeting at 7 o'clock, I mean at 8 o'clock that I have to attend, but online like this also. But I had this hour and I thought I would like to hear what you're talking about, what you're thinking, what any issues that are brought up. I've been a social worker, I'm retired, and I've filled up my time so far sitting with this COVID situation. But, you know, if working on anything that I'm knowledgeable about or can help, I might like to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Ruth?
Oh, now, can you hear me now? My name is Ruth Robbins. I am a Maryland resident, but I consider myself
You're breaking up, Ruth.
part of ANC and part of the communities of Chevy Chase Circle. Pardon me? Of Chevy Chase Circle, and I'm here. I guess I'm representing our group. Our mission. We're a partner group to the National Park Service. Our mission is to maintain and protect and renew the circle. So certainly the renaming is a tremendous issue and an important issue, but it's not something that we address as a board per se. But I'm here to be supportive. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Let's go to Michael.
Hi, Michael Gibbons. I live at the corner of on Broad Branch of the Chevy Chase Market and the school. So just one of the houses right on the corner.
Thank you.
Been here in the neighborhood for 22 years. I've been in and out of DC since I first came, as I was getting mustered into the Peace Corps in the early 70s, and lived in Adams Morgan in the early 80s. So DC, and my wife and I moved back to DC looking for a good primary school in the district. With my wife and I are both white, and our son, who we adopted at birth, is Dominican and Black. And so when we visited, we tried to get into the Oyster School from overseas, and we never could figure that out. So we shopped around for primary schools that were looked good, and then we tried to figure out how we could afford to live near them. And we found Lafayette School with its all Black teacher corps, very attractive. And sort of we landed here, and we've been here ever since. My son's 29 now. So we're on a journey as a family, navigating this whole question with a Black young man in the family who's suffered at the hands of New Jim Crow repeatedly and struggled with it. And we also were delighted to begin learning about the history of our neighborhood and peeling that onion and arriving at a school led by an all Black faculty when Alex was attending, and where they were a majority, you know, there were about half of the students were children of color at that point. And, you know, quite different from its origins. So I'm delighted to be part of a group that's exploring the journey of the evolution of this neighborhood in this city in our national context at this moment. I teach in the School of Education at AU, and we're all students of Dr. Kendi and his work. And so ways to think about how we bring how to be an anti-racist to bear in our neighborhood would be a really fun journey to be on with all of you. And this is actually my work. I teach and I also work in international children's rights around the world on issues like this.
Thank you, Michael. Connie?
Hello, everyone. My name is Connie Chang, and I've been in this particular neighborhood since 1998. I live on Nevada Avenue between Livingston and Legation. And prior to that, I was 3 years in Woodley Park. So I'm a transplant, though, from New York City. I was born in Queens and grew up in Manhattan's Chinatown. And so this neighborhood is a little different from that. But over the years, I've been much more involved in our community, very much involved in the Chevy Chase Community Center renovation. And I have 2 children who have gone through the DC public school system. My daughter went to Lafayette Deal, and now she just graduated as a senior from Wilson. And I have a younger daughter who just finished Lafayette after Montessori school on Connecticut, which my older one did also go to, and she's going to go to Deal. So I have 2 children there, and I'm very much, troubled, I guess, by the length of time that this country has dealt with racism, I guess. And I think in our neighborhood, it's really incumbent upon us to understand and to listen and to do what we can, to make the country better. It's very important. And so I'm here to join and listen. And I am also running for ANC Commissioner Jerry Malletz's seat, the 3G05, just for, I guess, open communication.
We're not running against each other. I'm not.
No. He's not running anymore.
Well,
I would not be running it.
Thank
Libby?
you.
Hi, I'm Libby. I live on Northampton Street, and I'm interested in taking part in this meeting as an individual. I have 2 teenage kids, and I'm blown away by what's going on, and again, how long it's taken. And I love DC. One of the things I love the most about it is its diversity. Although I'm constantly aware of the fact that our neighborhood is not diverse per se. And I want to see how I can help DC in that regard in terms of the inequity, the injustices that we have throughout the city. Been part of the anti-racism task force, diversity and inclusion task force at my kids' schools. And that was a beginning, but I'd like to see how else I can help beyond the Black Lives Matter movement, how concretely I can help in our neighborhood and across the city.
Thank you. We have 2 more, Shonda, then it's all yours. Gabe?
Hi, everyone. I'm Gabe. I am also part of Chevy Chase for Racial Progress with Lisa and Aaron and a few other members of Chevy Chase. I'm here not only as a member of the community. I'm here to, I guess I'm Gen Z. My generation is, I guess, the future leaders, and I want to start off strong on the right side of history, fighting against racism and any other injustices I see. Yeah, that's about it. Oh, and I live on Stevenson Place in between Broad Branch and 33rd Street.
Okay. And finally, Peter.
Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Lynch. I live on Connecticut and Legation. I grew up in the area on Military Road and then came back to DC in about 2015. I'm an English teacher and just here to listen and help where I can. I think my personal opinion is that our neighborhood and Ward 3 as a whole have a lot of work to do to explore how we can be helpful to the rest of the city. So that's sort of where I sit, and happy to hear more and learn more. Thank you.
Okay, well, there you go, Shonda. You got 20 strong.
Oh, thank you. This is a great turnout, and thanks to all of you, because you all have wonderful stories, and we appreciate your taking out the time because we do know it's valuable. Of course, our ANC wants to move forward with identifying some issues, and I'll say it in the outset, we by no means are experts in dealing with this. I can only bring to the table some of my personal experiences as an African American woman who lives in the neighborhood. And I'm originally from North Carolina, to let some of you know my background, but ended up going to Howard University here in Washington, and then eventually went to law school in Boston. So I've lived in different places, but I've been here in the Chevy Chase community, wow, for the last 11 years, which I know is very short compared to some of you. And we hope to, I basically combine all of your resources and your backgrounds in moving forward in this process. And so I wanted to start this segment off, which will be our discussion of what an identification of issues that the task force should begin to move forward with just going back to the original language from the ANC's resolution. And oh, I'm sorry, if I'm looking down, I'm pulling it up again. Trying to work the computer in Zoom is kind of a task here. But that language is just mainly to be used as a guiding principle for us. We are by no means, as a task force, limited to it, because we're all human, and perhaps our ANC did not think of or identify particular issues when we came up with the resolution. So by my naming certain issues, do not be afraid to speak up and use your voice. And actually, I will preface everything with that in terms of our task force, in that we respect all voices and all opinions. And as a group, we can decide on the issues that we move forward and present to our ANC. With that, you can find what I'm reading on the ANC's website, which is anc3g.org. And it's under the section on the task force on racism. And basically it mentions the task force mission and considering specific actions. So I'll just try to quickly read a few of the lines from it. That way I will not take time, but if you want to take a look at it now while we're online, we can do that together, and you can see what the framework was, and then we can begin our dialogue and conversation. Is that acceptable to everyone in terms of how we move forward? Okay. So to paraphrase in the second paragraph, it says task force mission. The task force will determine its own priorities based on input from the community, but it should place greatest emphasis on developing realistic steps that the commission can take to impact people's lives. The task force should recommend actionable items with the intent to close the racial divide. The task force should consider specific actions that the commission can take on the following topics. First, promoting a safe environment for all district residents, including safety from all forms of police bias. Next, addressing our community's need for more affordable housing that will promote income diversity and enrich our civic life. Then third, helping to immediately reduce and ultimately eliminate the health disparities between residents within the district, to paraphrase. And number four, helping to ensure full staff resources and adjusted funding necessary to help provide a healthy and outstanding education in the public schools in the district. Lastly, the task force may also address other issues, including what our community should do about symbols of our racist history that do not represent current and humanely acceptable values. And so that was I guess, a summary of the issues at least the ANC initially identified. And with that, Randy, did you want to start off our discussion or say anything before, as the beginning of the way we start?
Well, I'll just have one a little brief comment. We've already done, the ANC through its comprehensive plan task force has done a lot of work on affordable housing. And that to me is a really keystone kind of issue, because there are so many things that are predicted just based on your zip code, where you live. your health outcomes are better, education is better, safety is better. All of those things go back to where you live. And if we could provide more opportunities for affordable housing in our neighborhood, I think it would make a big impact on all the other aspects of it as well. But the kind of thing that I think we should be looking for is specific steps that we can take. How do we make sure there's more affordable housing in our neighborhood? And we've got some things that we're doing in connection with the new library that's going to be built and the new small area plan that we're going to have on Connecticut Avenue. But we can come up with other things too. And exactly how are we going to do that? How is the community going to support that effort? Those are the kinds of things that I think we could really learn from all of you about how we can make this a better neighborhood for ourselves and for everybody in the district. So there's really, we've got a lot of making up to do because this community has historically, as others have said, has historically been very exclusionary. And we need to turn that around. And I'm hoping we can come up with some very specific things we can do to make that happen.
Okay.
Could I just say, if anybody would like to say something, literally raise your hand, but if you're not on video, just go into chat and say you'd like to talk, and I'll unmute you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jerry. And so actually, I think as a part of this, thanks, Randy, for putting your issue forth and what we would like to do during this segment. And in terms, we have about how many people total? I think 20? 20 people. What we'd like to use most of tonight's meeting for is putting the issues on the table. I don't necessarily have a board, but I do have my notebook. And what we'd like to do, as Jerry mentioned, is to have you raise your hand to go around, and we would at this point try list the issues that we think that are top for our neighborhood to tackle, and then as a group begin to narrow down what is realistic for us to tackle. And for instance, I know our time may be limited tonight. It's 7:35 at this point. And I think we had designated about an hour to the meeting. Is that correct, Randy?
Maybe a little more than that. We can go a little bit more.
We can go a little over, but by no means would this be the end of our discussion if we cannot finish that tonight. I want us to begin like an email or have a forum where we can continue the conversation of identifying the issues, so that at our next meeting, we will know what those issues are, and we can begin to move forward and decide what our working groups will be and how exactly we should organize. And you all, and I know a number of you out there have done a lot of work in the community on various task force. You can help us with how we need to organize our working groups. So with that, if anyone wants to speak on what they think we should tackle, feel free.
I'll speak. One of the things, as I look at things that I think that we could actually make a difference in without needing a whole lot of help from other parts of the city. And education is one of them. You know, the education system in DC is very inequitable. There are features of the resources that schools get that make it even more inequitable. And a lot of that has to do with the amount of money that a lot of the public schools raise through their parent-teacher associations that change the funding formulas completely in their favor. So for instance, they could hire a full-time art teacher or music teacher, whereas schools that don't have that can't do anything about that. And that's really something that I think, you know, where the rubber hits the road, that people could say, you're right, all this money that we raise, maybe we should distribute it more equitably. And that's something that I think I'd like to see us address. There are other things in there as well in terms of food services at school, because this is something I've been dealing with my whole career, education, and I know for a fact that when kids come to school and they're hungry, people that don't have, some people that have a hot meal waiting for them at school, the data is pretty obvious that they do a little bit better than kids that go to school hungry. So I'd like to see something done about changing the whole food services program in schools, so that everybody, people don't get stigmatized by saying only if you're a certain income level. It should be open to everybody, so everybody could join together and be in a situation like that. And the last thing I just want to say is, in DC itself, we have about 48,000 kids in DCPS, about 44,000 in charter schools, and upwards of 20,000 in private schools. So when you look at education as a whole across DC, the inequity of things just jumps out at you. And I think those are things that we can make a big difference in. DC can, and I think that we could take the lead in providing some impetus to do some of those things.
Thank you, Jerry. Is there anyone else? I know with these issues, a number of you mentioned the naming of the Chevy Chase Circle or other issues. Is there anyone who would like to speak on that issue or any other issues? I see I'm getting a lot of notes about people supporting the equitable resources. All right, well, I guess maybe we'll put it out in terms
Carl raised his hand.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Carl, did you raise your hand?
I did, thanks.
Oh, sorry, Carl. I couldn't see
No,
it. Sorry. I'm still learning to work Zoom.
So, part of the mission has to be self-knowledge, right? And that's the aspect of it that Historic Chevy Chase DC is in. So I guess I am speaking for HCCDC now. We'd love to know the experience that people have in dealing with this issue across the neighborhood.
Yes.
That would be very valuable for us to be able to turn around in some way as a kind of a mirror to what our experience has actually been. And I think that might be useful for us. And that's something that we could actually do.
Oh, Carl, when you say the experiences, do you mean personal experiences of individuals or history in the community? Could you expand a little?
Yeah, it could be both of those things, of course. Yeah, I mean, I didn't say that with any particular outcome in mind.
Yes.
It's a general invitation that we are here with that as part of our purpose, our raison d'etre. So I didn't come with a pre-cooked agenda or anything, but it's what we do, and we'd be happy to participate in that way.
Thank you. I'm putting this on our board.
Elma has her hand up.
Yes, it just occurred to me that one issue that I'm not sure how strong it is among those who live in homes and so forth in this area. Of course, they're the two big retirement communities, but among seniors, is there a problem of those seniors who are living by themselves? Are they able to get the health care they need, their transportation they need, or any help with part-time help if they need to be taken care of in some way? That might be something that you might want to look at in this commission too.
Okay. In terms of like health disparities, Thelma?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, not only that, but the seniors who are living by themselves in a home, do they have enough transportation advantages and and or if they need part-time assistance, are they able to get that?
Okay, thank you. So thus far, we.
Michael's got his hand up, I think now.
Hi, Michael.
You're muted. You're muted though, Michael.
Okay, thank you. Look forward to hearing more voices too. I was linking back to Carl's comment about self-knowledge. I guess a couple of different ways to look at engaging more of the community in self-examination about this issue would be, worth conversing about in different ways. For example, if we were to ask each grade of the primary school, Lafayette School, to investigate an aspect of racism in our community, how come there aren't more Black people living here? Where do Black kids go to school, if not many of them this particular year are in our school as a magnet school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Parents could help their children to do the investigating, teachers. And I remember one of the earlier versions of the history of the neighborhood was a project through the history classes of the upper grades of Lafayette School when my son was here. And that, we could do that with a racial justice lens and have children learn how to investigate their reality with help from teachers and adults, and then have that process involve more members of the community in learning about the structure of the reality around us and to pose questions to us about what could be done. That would be a way of kind of having the school as a hub and having children be involved, and then having parents and other residents in the community join in. That's one example of a way of having all of us get involved in situating ourselves in a better understanding of the situation that then gives rise to us needing to do corrective things. So that's one idea. Another would be maybe sharing a book club across all of the sub, A, B, C, D, E, F of the ANC, where, as a community, we read Kendi's book together, or we read one of the readings that was proposed to us in the invite, and have discussions in the neighborhood around a common reading, the way some people in neighborhoods read the same novel and then have conversations. We could read something about this topic, including maybe work from the Historical Society and those earlier versions of histories of our neighborhood about our neighborhood. Who was Mr. Joyner? Who were the original inhabitants of this land, even before the farmers got here? Then what happened? And then what happened? And how did we get a whites only school surrounded by a whites only neighborhood? And now how did we evolve a little bit from that? Those are all ways of kind of raising our own awareness and knowledge about how our neighborhood is situated inside a city that is divided by race. And then that would provide a context within which then action about it could be well informed. And all of us would have a kind of shared baseline on which to begin acting, to set priorities and then take actions.
Okay. I see, Sean, I see Peter has written a few things, so I'd like to see if he wouldn't mind speaking about some of those.
Yes, thanks, Jerry.
Yeah, no problem. I think sometimes it can seem daunting to try to, reinvent the wheel and create your own platform, which is fine, and we should definitely do that. But Black Lives Matter DC, DC Mutual Aid, the DC Poor People's Campaign, those are just a couple of groups that I'm thinking of off the top of my head, already have platforms and agendas that they would like city politicians to consider.
Yes.
And they need support, particularly from all over the city. And we can assert some pressure on Mary Che in Ward 3 and rally our neighborhoods and constituents in the area. So sometimes I think listening to what other people in the city are asking for and what they need is sometimes the best way to go, and finding how we can be helpful in those places.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to share some things that might develop there, and happy to help with that if need be.
No, yes. These are all great suggestions, and definitely by no means is our ANC wanting to limit us. And you're right, there are a lot of groups who've already done the work. And so perhaps our working group or task force and one of the working groups as we move forward can begin to gather those resources. And you just mentioned you could share with us what some of the platforms are and perhaps how we can support those platforms.
For sure, and I think one of the hopeful things right now is that just about every organization is doing the things that we're doing right now, whether it's a school, whether it's a parent organization, whether it's a nonprofit or a startup sort of community organization. I think everybody's having these conversations. So a lot of times linking up and gathering the power amongst groups can be incredibly helpful.
No, that is so true. I agree with you, not to take up the time, but I actually Googled before our meeting task forces on racism or task forces on anti-racism. And you are right. Like now there are so many communities across the country that are doing what we're doing, trying to take on the work and to take it seriously in terms of how we can institute change in all our communities. So we appreciate all of your ideas, resources, and it is definitely a task, and hopefully we can, not hopefully, but we will, for our neighborhood at least begin, if not with our document, have a framework for what we can do moving forward. And by no means, and I think our ANC members have mentioned this, do we want this to be a short-term project? We want to continue and do good work. So, is there anyone else who wanted to speak?
Yes, Shonda, I see that Connie has responded both to Michael and Peter about things. So I think, and she's not on video, so she can't raise her hand. So
sorry, and if Jerry, if you want to take over since you see all the hands, that would be, I can't for some reason on my side see it. Good.
Yeah, I was just using the chat to be supportive of ideas that people have raised. And so I do believe that learning about what others are doing so that we're more educated about what's happening, because we're not going to be in lockstep with every organization. It would be nice to have an understanding of what they're trying to achieve and whether or not we're supportive and how we can help advance some of their goals if we're in alignment. So I like that idea. I also very much appreciate Michael's example of how to use Lafayette, certainly Lafayette Elementary School, where, and also Deal, frankly, the classes there, they're very tied together with how they teach. And so they could do a whole kind of project that cuts across and with art and everything else. And that I feel like they get to learn why they're in this neighborhood. You know, my house, we bought it in 1998, and neither my husband nor I could have purchased it years back because of the covenant. You know, it's no blacks, no Jews, no Asians. I mean, Jewish and Asian, you know, it'd be very difficult. So, but I'm still not totally educated on that. You know, you slip through the cracks and you live your life, and then you realize that there's so much that you need to learn. And so I think that if we can bring these kids on board early, that they have an awareness when they walk around the neighborhood, that would be really great. So I like that idea. I'm very much in support of that.
Thank you, Connie. I think Jerry, Aaron mentioned, or I saw Aaron.
Libby had her hand up. So
Okay. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just had a question. Do we know in Chevy Chase how many minority-owned businesses we have, and in particular African-American-owned businesses. I'm just thinking more about the entrepreneurship side, and given that, especially in the Chevy Chase, Connecticut corridor, we are anticipating making changes to incorporate the affordable housing and some mixed retail. I'm wondering if there are any special strategies and incentives for helping African American businesses take root.
I
Yes,
can
Jerry.
respond to that. At this time, I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe there is only one Black-owned business in the Chevy Chase corridor along Connecticut Avenue. One of the things that we hopefully have going for us in the next year is in current funding in the budget, there's money to create a main street in Chevy Chase. And one of the objectives of a main street is to recruit businesses, to encourage new businesses, to increase hiring. And that would definitely be one of the goals, I would guess, for a main street, because it is a very obvious shortcoming in what we have right now.
Well, especially if we want to include more affordable housing and in that regard.
Right.
And that also fits into our small area plan too, because the small area plan, which we've got funding for the Office of Planning to do, could include what kinds of businesses we want to be able to attract there. And all of this ought to be meshed together. The Main Street, the small area plan, affordable housing, all of that. But those are definitely things we ought to be thinking about.
Mm-hmm. I see Robin had her hand up.
Hi, I was reading through the chats and someone had mentioned that they would like to see Black history in the school curriculum. The comment I have about that is that sounds like segregation to me. Why do we have to have Black history separate from, excuse me if I offend anybody, I don't mean to offend anybody. Why does it have to be separate from white history or Asian history or you know, Native American history? Why can't all of that be one history? Because if you have something separate like Black history, that becomes an elective in the school, which means a lot of kids are not going to take it. So they're not going to learn about it. So, I mean, do we have the power to change the textbook so it includes the history of all of the people that are responsible for America being America?
Robin, you raised a good point, and that is perhaps something that one of our working groups, maybe if it falls under the educational auspices, could look into. What recommendations can be made regarding the district's current textbooks? What do the textbooks currently have? So you do raise a good issue that one of the working groups could look into.
I think Aaron had something he wanted to say.
Yeah, sorry, that was my comment that Robin was referring to. I want to make it clear I wasn't saying Black history should be taught like as an elective. I was saying that Black history should be a part of the required curriculum, especially starting in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
Because currently, the way that we learn, we'll really only spend, at least this is in my experience, we really only learn about exclusively like the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement. That is the only Black history we ever discuss, and we really only discuss it during Black History Month and during no other part of the year. So my point was just that we should make Black history be taught as part of the required curriculum and in our textbooks. I didn't want to say like Black history should be taught as an elective. Black history should be a required part of regular history curriculum.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Yeah, I would. Am I unmuted?
Okay.
I would just raise an issue. I don't know if there's anything the ANC can do about it, but I think it's an issue that going into a wonderful era of planning that Randy refers to, I just want to point out, there is a disconnect sometimes between what we say we want to do and the efforts we want to make in up here, and how that's perceived by the other people across racial lines in the city. And I think we have to be cognizant and continue to increase our awareness of how we are perceived and how what we say is interpreted in among other groups. You know, I've found in talking about planning issues and affordable housing issues and that sort of thing over many years, not just in our recent comprehensive plan task force, that a lot of people, there's a lot of distrust, diminishment of disparaging comments about the competence of the DC government. It's a recurring theme, and it is, I believe, and I think a lot of other people believe, is fundamentally racist. It's an ongoing problem, and it undermines our ability to be credible about planning in our neighborhood and talking about, you know, using phrases like the character of the neighborhood and that sort of thing. These are loaded terms, and we have to come to grips with that and find ways to talk about these things. That's all.
Thank you, Ron. So with that, I've noted we're about at 8 o'clock, and what I would like to do now is read, I guess, what I see as a summary of the major topics that have been raised tonight for things for us to look into. And then based on this, we can decide and move into what are our next steps and what we should do for our next gathering, and perhaps what we can do in between our next gathering using email, a group email. To summarize, and you can please raise your hand if I've missed something. The group is suggesting that we look at other platforms and other groups such as Black Lives Matter or Change.org for other action platforms that we can support as one. Two, that we should look at the historical background of Chevy Chase and educate individuals on the historical piece of Chevy Chase. Three, under the community realm, look at both ways to engage the community from both adults to children. And within the community aspect, some things that were suggested, having community reads. Next was and this is by no means any order priority, education. And under education, we've looked at everything or talked about from the curriculum to the textbooks and what exactly could be done. Next was businesses and whether our area could look at the comprehensive plan and some of the things that the city has done to basically come up with an action plan. Next would be healthcare, looking at disparities within the community of seniors. And next, have the affordable housing piece and looking at that as it relates to bringing a diverse neighborhood and community. And then the last piece, which goes, I guess, back to, I guess, the history, just looking at the demographics of our community currently, like what is the current state of our community, and then going from there. So that is the list. If I've missed anything, please let me know. And then from there, we can decide next how we want to move forward with, I guess, the 7 pieces that I have included on this. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. a lot of information here, but it was mentioned regarding the various naming issues of streets, fountains, etc. within our community. So that is, I guess, my summary of some of the points you made. Did we miss anything? Did anyone have any comments on that? And what I hope to do with this, or what we hope to do as the ANC, is after tonight's meeting, once we have your emails, we will send this out as a summary of the highlighted issues, at least, and we can feel free at that point to continue to have a dialogue. But with those issues mentioned, I guess we can transition into our next steps.
Lisa had a comment.
Yes. Michael?
Lisa, I think, got a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, can you hear me? So about because I've been vocal about like the renaming of the or removing really the Newlands Memorial and the fountain. And I really am adamant that the ANC act on this. And I know you guys are going to have a vote on a resolution in 2 weeks. So I don't necessarily, I hope that it's not something that's actually just folded into this task force and not addressed by the ANC promptly.
Actually, to respond and not to cut you off, but yes, I am actually going to be introducing a resolution at our July 27th meeting. We mentioned it on Monday at our last meeting. By no means are we folding it in. And the reason at the end that I mentioned street naming is because other residents have sent emails saying, aside from the Newlands fountain, the Chevy Chase fountain, that perhaps this task force could look at Chevy Chase wide the names of various streets. So that's why I added that piece on there. But no, you're right. We're not leaving that aside, and we're going to have July 27th. Please attend our Zoom ANC meeting.
Okay, good. I'm really happy to hear that. Yeah, thank you.
So with that, Jerry or Randy, do you have any comments on the next steps for our task force and our organizing?
I think Cal has his hand up.
Sorry.
That's all right. It's perfect timing because I don't know how we're going to organize. I've been in a lot of groups trying to organize between meetings since we can't meet in person. So whatever we do, I'd like to be involved with how we set up our collaborative documents and even how we use Zoom, because we can get on a call like this and break apart into subcommittees and then come back together. There's all kinds of ways this can be done. So I have a whole bunch of experience with that from the Occupy movement, actually.
Oh, definitely. Charles, we'll use you as a resource.
Some tools are good, some tools are not so good.
Well, just along that same line, Cal, all of the ANC commissioners across the city have been holding meetings together. This is really remarkable. It's taken all this time to do it, but the pandemic created it. And we've been holding meetings on Monday nights. And we held a meeting last Friday, though, that was focused specifically on policing and the racial issues related to policing. And we did that exactly what you suggested. We broke up into groups, and that was very effective. And that's something that we certainly can do in a future meeting.
Cool.
And so moving forward, would the group be amenable to meeting, at least scheduling our next meeting for 1 week from today? Any suggestions?
I have classes every other Wednesday, so.
Just schedule something.
Okay, that's
Won't
what
work for everybody. Yeah.
Yes, all right, that's what we'll do. Our next steps will be to schedule something. We will send it out to you all as a group, and then as well as we will send out tonight the notes from tonight's meeting, and
just to make sure we've got everybody's email.
Yes.
Maybe I've started a list of email addresses that maybe everyone could send it to me to make sure that I've got your email address correct. And then we can create a list of emails that we can all be on.
Yeah.
So we can communicate.
And then prior to that meeting, we will also send out a tentative agenda. One of the things I know that you all mentioned, especially Peter, was other platforms. And so I'm wondering, Peter, if you would be able to provide us on the email the links of the organizations that you mentioned, such as Black Lives Matter and any other ones that you may know about for the group, so that we can take a look at the platforms, and that could potentially be on our agenda for the next meeting, having everyone look at what other platforms were, and then deciding a way to move forward.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
I think Lisa had something she wanted to say.
Okay. Lisa?
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just gonna, ask you about, going back to the history thing, but we'll talk about it next week, so that's okay.
Okay, all right, in the history piece. We'll note that, okay.
Someone asked for my email address. It's 3g03@anc.dc.gov.
Okay. And then
3g03@anc.dc.gov.
And then if you need my personal email, my ANC email, unfortunately, has a lot of kinks. So I don't always get the email. So I will give you just my tuckgarfield@gmail.com if you want to reach out. So after tonight's meeting, we'll definitely reach out and summarize what we've talked about tonight, and then talk about our next steps. Are there any questions before I guess we try to wrap up in the next few minutes?
I'd just like to throw out basically a PSA.
Okay.
The Washington Historical Society tomorrow night at 7:30 is having a sort of webinar kind of discussion about statehood with one of the authors of Chocolate City, and that's moderated by Bob Levy. So it sounds like an interesting thing. It's 7:30 tomorrow, Washington Historical Society.
Right. Carl, did you want to add anything to that?
Oh, am I unmuted? Yeah. You're all invited to check out our website. It's historicchevychasedc.org. We have a number of resources on it that are relevant to our discussion tonight. And I hope you will all take a look at it and also join the organization. Thanks.
Oh, thanks. So if there aren't any more questions,
There's one on the chat, a
Okay.
question about the schedule. And this is in the framework that we have on our website that Jerry posted the link to previously, but the schedule is the commission will organize and schedule the first meeting July 15th. The task force will set the times of all subsequent meetings in coordination with the commission. Meetings will be held virtually as long as there are restrictions on public meetings, and meetings will be noticed at least 1 week in advance on the commission's website, Facebook, Twitter accounts, etc. The task force may report to the commission on matters whenever it chooses and may make recommendations to the commission at any time. The chair of the task force should advise the chair of the commission in writing at least monthly on the task force's activities and progress. The task force should prepare a comprehensive report with its findings and recommendations for the commission's consideration no later than October 15th, so the commission may consider those recommendations at the October 26th meeting. That could be changed, that could be an interim report, it could be anything we want it to be. But that's the schedule that the commission has outlined.
Mm-hmm. And then, for instance, at our next meeting, we will send this out. We know that we did not select a chair tonight for the group. We wanted to come together, basically hear everyone's ideas, but that is a part of what the ANC has tasked. And by my being a member, or Jerry or Randy or Chris being members of the ANC, we do not necessarily have to be the chairs of the task force. So that is one issue that for our next agenda, which hopefully will be in 1 week, not hopefully, but we'll get the date out. We'll select the chair or an individual to be the chair. We will identify the issues, and at that point, decide what our working groups will be and how we want to move forward. And in the interim, through your emails, if you have any ideas, because I know a number of you have done community organizing, you have suggestions, then we're open to those. So thank you all for coming tonight.
Cal has his hand up. Before we end, Cal has his hand up again.
Okay.
Cal?
Chandra, could you just say your email address again? You said it so quickly that I didn't get it.
Oh, yes. I know I talk kind of fast. It's Tuck, T as in Tom, UCK, Garfield, like the cat, at gmail.com.
Tuck, like tucking under your chin?
Yes, exactly. And
Okay.
so, and feel free to send us emails in the interim, but you should have something in your box once you send us your email within the next few days. That way you know exactly how we're going to move forward. But we thank you tonight for all of your input and taking the time out of your schedule, because we do value it. We know it's precious, especially during these times. And so thank you again for being willing to do the work on behalf of the Chevy Chase community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Everyone stay well.
Stay well.